Empowering your employees means letting them have a voice, hearing their opinions, and then implementing some of their ideas. Employees are our success. And any leader who thinks that the employees do not make them successful, they need to be taken out in the back 40, right? Because it just doesn't make sense. If you think you can run a company by yourself and that company is successful because of you, then you need to check yourself at the door.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today, we're going to talk about empowering your employees. When you empower the people around you, you signal to them that you trust them, that you want them to grow, but it also comes with a lot of challenges. A lot of people worry about will it be done right? Will it be done to my standards? Will it be done as well as I can do it? I feel like we as leaders have to be able to let go that it won't be done exactly the way we would do it. It won't be done exactly to our exact standards, but will we get to a point where they can do it pretty good? Will it be better? And eventually sometimes will it be better than what you could do if you had the task on your list? Absolutely. I've seen that happen over and over and over. For example, this podcast, I used to edit it. I don't edit it anymore. But all that being said, today we're going to talk about empowering your employees. Our special guest is Carrie Cook. She is the CEO of Ignite Funding. They're a broker on investor deals. It's really, kind of fascinating what they're doing. They're really growing fast as a company, and they are funding billions of dollars, if you think about that, with a B. Well, we talk about empowering your employees the right way. We talk about empowering your employees by trusting them, by truly listening to them and truly valuing them and getting them to feel a little bit more like owners. So hopefully you'll enjoy today. We'll give you some insight and wisdom around leadership that you didn't have before. My name is Gene Hammett. I'm an executive coach. We do leadership development for managers that want to become leaders and for companies that are in some type of cultural transformation. So we support companies that are really growing fast or want to grow faster than they are today by jumping in and helping not only leaders at the top level of the company, but also helping other levels of leadership throughout the company. And that's what really drives growth. If you're curious, make sure you send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. If you're not quite sure you want to take a step forward, you can listen in on some of our conversations. We invite the people that have been on the show before. We invite some special guests every once in a while to do virtual conversations once a month. So it is recorded, but you can come in and ask your questions of other CEOs. You can talk about strategies. You can say what's working for you, and you can get to know some other CEOs of fast growth companies. So if you're curious about that, go to coreelevation.com/virtual conversations. Check out every month. The topic changes. So if it resonates with you, sign up and we'll see you there. Now, here's the interview with Carrie. Carrie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. I want to have a great interview with you today, talking about your company and also talking about your principles that guide you as you grow this company. Before we get into that, tell us about Ignite Funding.
So Ignite Funding is a mortgage broker, and we offer financing needs of borrowers through primarily the Western United States with investors that are seeking to earn double-digit returns. So we offer trust deed investments and collateralized real estate.
Fantastic. Where do you think the market's going? I know that there's a lot of changes going on with real estate, but if you had the crystal ball in your world, what would you say over the next 3 years?
My crystal ball is kind of like a snow globe. Let's shake it up and see what happens. Clearly, we're in a position right now where there's a lot of change going on, right? From the political climate, the economic climate. And so interest rates, all of those things are factors that we're seeing. As a lender outside of the banking environment, what we have seen is that the interest rate gap from hard money lending to bank lending has really squished down. And while we're not changing our interest rates and the banks are increasing theirs, we're finding that there's actually more opportunity for individuals to invest and for financing outside of the banking environment. I foresee that happening for the next couple of years before we start to see maybe some loosening of those interest rates going back down. But ultimately, we've been around for a long time, 20 plus years. So while interest rates are up and interest rates are down, we're still lending when banks aren't. So my snow globe is pretty settled at the bottom of the globe at this point.
Now, one more last question on this, and I guess probably no one knows the real answer, but do you think interest rates for traditional loans are going to be going down in the next year, or does it depend on who comes into the presidency?
Well, I think a lot of it just depends on us as individuals and our spending habits. We need to see a deeper, I say deeper debt. We need to see the employment rates, starting to expand. We need to see a lot of variables before we start to see interest rates going down. I think we thought, last year we'd see interest rates going down, but it wasn't right. We were still spending, more money than ever. So recession needs to, has some multiplying factors to it that haven't been met yet. So will we see interest rates decrease next year? Maybe. Does it depend on who's in office? Probably. Um, does it depend on our spending habits as individuals? Absolutely. So there's multiple variables that need to happen all at the same time for us to see any decreases. If we see them, I think they'll be minimal.
Well, Carrie, that's the business portion of today, to talk about your business, to set some context. I know our team has done some research on your company, and you believe that you're successful because you've empowered your employees.
Absolutely.
Give us the best definition you can, kind of in layman's terms. What does empowering your employees mean to you?
Well, empowering your employees means letting them have a voice, hearing their opinions, and then implementing some of their ideas. Employees are our success. And any leader who thinks that the employees do not make them successful, they need to be taken out in the back 40, right? Because it just doesn't make sense. If you think you can run a company by yourself and that company is successful because of you, then you need to check yourself at the door.
I like the way you frame that, and you come up really pretty direct on it. I know you told me you're blunt, and I appreciate that. I have asked this question. I stopped asking it because I got so many answers in this. But I think one of the bigger differences between fast growth companies and companies that are maybe bigger and slower growing is
Mhm.
how they look at their employees. And
Yeah.
here's the question I ask. I call it the impossible question. As a leader of a fast growth company, what's more important, your customers or your employees?
Employees first.
I agree with
Because
you.
the employees take care of the customers.
I agree with you. I've
And you
sat
don't have
down with
customers without employees. So, I mean,
exactly.
you
I sat down with some really big CEOs that have been on the show before, private conversations, not recorded, and they told me I was wrong. And it really made me think about that question, because they're like, well, customers are always going to be more important. And I'm like, well, let me reframe it. And I added that piece there. If you take
yeah,
care of employees, they take care of customers. Yeah,
right.
but you're missing the point. And he gave me
Mhm.
20 minutes lecture on this. And this was someone that's pretty famous and whatnot. And so I came back to my own world, in the next 30 interviews, just like this, I asked the same question, just very matter of factly, not trying to lead them in any way. And it was
Yeah,
100% said is employee first.
yeah.
Overall, Inc. leaders like yourself, CEOs of
Mhm.
fast growth companies, 93% of the time will say it's employees first.
Yeah.
Is that something you learned somewhere else, or did you just see it as being a leader, how important it is to lead and put your employees first?
I mean, the reality is you can either try to kill yourself doing it yourself, or you can start empowering other people to help you do the greater goal. And so, that's really where it sunk in for me. I very much like to be in control, but there's a point where you have to relinquish that in order to get that overarching goal completed. So when I come in the morning, so funny. People ask me, what's the first thing you do in the morning? Well, first of all, I evaluate my glass balls from my rubber balls, right? I've got these glass balls that absolutely have to be tended to. And then I've got all these rubber balls bouncing around me. And those rubber balls will get tended to, but the glass balls have to be taken care of first. The vast majority of the glass balls is making sure that the employees that I have empowered to do their job have the tools that they need to do it. Once that's been taken care of, it's almost like I'm doing 16 jobs at the same time, right? Because now I've just empowered those individuals to go out and do their job. So I know those glass balls are being, carefully tended to while I take care of some of those rubber balls that are bouncing around. so they don't become glass balls.
Now, Carrie just talked about employee first. Now, you may not 100% agree with this, but it's very common in our world of fast growth to see this happening more and more and more is for leaders to put employees first so that they will put their customers first. In fact, leaders will say, I don't want them to just take responsibility for the work. I want them to feel a sense of ownership. And I want to give that to them. I want to trust them enough. I want to empower them. And I want to hold them accountable, but not in a controlling kind of way, but just as a way for them to grow. Now, if you do that, the employees will take care of your customers to the nth degree, and they will help you grow and innovate your company. I've seen it happen over and over and over. So there's my bits of wisdom around employee first. Back to Carrie. I love the analogy because the glass balls, you have to put a lot more care into it. And if you drop them,
Yes,
it's hard to repair that trust.
that's
Whereas I
right.
guess your rubber balls probably more resilient and they're going to bounce.
Absolutely.
They're not going to be emotional. The
That's
glass
right.
balls probably have some emotions that tie with it.
Yeah. Yep.
When you are leading and empowering your employees, what have you learned maybe the hard way? Is there anything that you could share with us that?
Hmm. Empowering employees. Well, employees, you got to make sure that they're ready to manage. So you can empower somebody, but what they do with it could be harmful to the employees below them. So what I have found is in order to empower people at a level that you need them to be at, you need to bring them into your environment. And so what I've done is I'm huge on mentorship. So every member of management has been in my office for as long as they want, but I invite them to come in and sit with me and day in a life, every day in and day out, feel the pressures, feel the stress, feel how I deal with individuals while maintaining a very level, even keel, all day long. How does she stay so, so normal, if you will, right? She maintains this level of consistency. How does she do that with all this stress? You have to bring them into the environment so that they can see how that's done. Just like children, right? They learn from their parents. Employees learn from leaders. Employees, when they learn from leaders, become managers. And so you have to walk them through those steps. I've had managers come into my office for weeks. I've had other managers in my office for years. I've had managers come back into my office just for a refresher because they feel like they've taken a Y in the road and they don't understand why they're not getting the same reaction from their employees. So empowering people means letting them into your world. Let them understand how you lead and how you're successful. I think that's huge. I wish more leaders would open their offices like that to their management staff.
I've worked with a lot of leaders that want to empower better. And there's lots of
Mhm.
tools, lots of things that we can do. One of the things I ask them to do is to get better at and what I would call powerful agreements. So if you ask
Yes.
someone to do something, you
Hmm.
ask a couple of questions that make sure that they really understand it, that they really are going to take it ideally to the finish, right? If they run into
Yes.
challenges, they can always
Yes.
come back to you, but
Yeah,
they're not going to hand it back to you because it gets hard. Is
exactly.
there any tools or anything you can think of specifically as we get really tactical or
Yeah.
practical around empowering your employees?
I mean, as far as tools are concerned, when it comes to giving a manager the tools that they need, you have to establish the basis of what the goal is first. And once you understand what that goal is, empower them with coming back to you and saying, how are you going to achieve this? What do you need to achieve this? If you tell them what to do all the time and you don't make them think, then all you're going to get is your ideas employed over and over and over again, and them coming back to you over and over and over again. So you have to put in place a strategy for which it requires them to come back to you with tools to implement those strategies, with a budget to implement those strategies. Don't make them think they're working with nothing. And when you challenge somebody to come back, you get greater technology, you get greater ideas, you get greater buy-in. And so that's what I do to try to get them to work outside of those boxes. I'm kind of chuckling as I have a marketing team behind me, running these cameras. But the reality is they need to be shown from a leader that, hey, go get the tools you need to do your job effectively, because here's the goals that I have set for you. And so they have to think through that. How do I become more efficient? How do I generate more videos, short videos quicker? Okay, well, if I have this tool, I can shave off 3 hours of my time so that I can get Carrie what she needs over here. You've got to empower them to have those tools and the resources and the funds to do it. Don't be cheap. Don't be cheap.
If you want to empower people, you want to make sure that when you speak, they get what you're saying. You want to be explicit with that means they can't be misunderstood. So one thing I've done, I talked about this earlier with the powerful agreements, is to put this as sort of a play that you can run at the end of a conversation with someone. You might ask questions like, so what did you just hear us talk about? What are you committed to from this conversation? Or you might say, well, what does good like in this project? Or what does excellent look like? And having those conversations after the real conversation where you kind of empower someone to do something, make sure that they're in sync, make sure that there's alignment there, and you get a chance to refine that if needed, and be really clear about this. I would also take it a step further and say that you should document it and they should document it to know what they're doing, when they're doing it, and what good looks like. And that way it can't be misunderstood. Back to Carrie. Well, lots of detail there, Carrie. We're here talking about empowering your employees, and you feel like that's made a profound impact on your ability to create the kind of growth you have. Is it 4 times in a row on the Inc. list for Ignite
Yes.
Funded? Very impressive, right? It gets harder as your revenues grow because it's just a math
Yes.
question. But I also want to know, like, beyond the tools, like the inner trust that it takes to empower someone. How have you wrestled with that and come at peace to it may not be as good as you can do it, or it may not
Yes.
be, perfect, which I know there's never a perfect, but it may not be the way you want it done. Are you able to share with us a little bit about how you wrestle with that?
How I settle? Is that the
How
question?
you really get to, settling
Yeah,
and
you do.
allow
I
them to
mean,
do what they can do, and
yeah.
then still challenge them to push and do better next time.
Yeah. I've learned some valuable lessons through economic downturn. And through economic downturn, it forces you to, have a limited budget for what you have to work with. And when you have a limited budget, you have to be very strategic with the people that you put around you. You can either go after the, Ivy Leagues, or you can go after somebody who has a solid education and a willingness to expand beyond what they've been taught through education. Um, and a willingness to know that this is a long haul. This isn't a short haul. And so when I selected my management staff, which have been around me for almost a decade now, so I've been super fortunate that I don't have a lot of turnover. And I think it does directly tie back to the type of leader that I am. I believe that now. It took me a long time to understand why they were sticking around so long, but it's because we never stop evolving. And so I took a chance on individuals that others probably wouldn't have, because I knew that there was a lot more growth potential where, if you just hire straight from the top, it's very difficult to continue to try to help them grow because they feel like they're at their peak. I need people that always feel like they haven't hit their peak yet and that there's still room to grow. And so there is a challenge there. There's a struggle there. So the trust factor comes with them continuing to evolve and change, not getting stagnant. That is a huge element for growth. So why do I keep hitting that Inc. 5000? It's because we do not have a ceiling. We are not at our potential. We're just hitting strides. But this is a relay, not a marathon. This is a relay that just keeps going.
I want to ask you more personally in this, because as a leader, you have to continue to evolve too.
Yes.
Looking back, what's the most profound recently element of your own involvement as a leader?
I have discovered, probably too late, that I should have spent more time and dedicated more time to family life. This is going to sound crazy because I have spent so much time making sure that my employees have a work balance that is something that I'm proud of for them, but forgot to do that for me.
Yeah.
And so it sounds crazy, right? I know you're expecting a completely different answer for me to spin that, but I'm actually discovering that if I give myself more time, that I'm a better leader to them. And up until recently, I hadn't quite figured that out. And so that's a struggle. That's a huge struggle from a CEO side of things, where you're trying to create an environment, but yet you're not putting yourself in it. You're not allowing yourself to participate in it. So profound. I've noticed a difference actually when I take time for myself. The type of leader I am is different.
You frame that as in I might be surprised. I've sat on this side with coaching clients. I won't say every one of them, but all of them have seen the benefits of a little bit more balance in their own life,
Yeah.
because they'll work weekends, they'll work,
Mhm.
after dinner. I'm like,
Yeah.
you work after dinner every night? What does that do to your marriage? What does it do to your kids? And I ask these questions and they're like, well, it's not ideal. Or,
Mhm.
they'll say, well, I have to catch up. Like
Yeah.
something's off if that's the way you have to catch up, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
I'd had friends and clients. It's like, I'll just get up earlier. I'm like, well, what are you getting up now? And he goes, well, I'll just start getting up at 4:30. I'm like, what if that's not the solution?
Yeah.
What if there's something else
Absolutely.
going on? So you're not alone, is my point, Carrie. And
Mhm.
one little micro story that goes with this: I had a client that had to get at work at 7:30. She just like,
Mhm.
I just feel like that's the time I want to be here before everyone else and all that stuff. And I'm like, all right, what do you wish was happening? She goes, I wish I had more time for myself. So not necessarily family, but she did have 2 young kids and
Mhm.
she had a husband. And she's like, I used to run. And I go, well,
Yeah.
what is running to you? And she's like, if I could get 2 to 3 miles in a day or 3 or 4 days a week, I feel like it would just change everything. And I was like, well, how do we make that happen? She ended up
Yeah.
doing it. 2 weeks later, she comes back and goes, oh my God, my life is completely different. I can get to work at 9 and
Mhm.
nothing changes. And
Yeah.
I've taken care of myself first and I come in with energy and focus. So what you're saying, you're not alone.
Yeah. Yep.
Carrie, thank you so much for being here, talking about empowering your employees, talking about your business, Ignite Funding. I really appreciate your insights and really appreciate your wisdom.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So, wrapping up today's conversation, I'm going to let Carrie listen to my take on this. I really enjoy leaders that understand that they've got to continue to evolve themselves. They have to lead by example, and this is a great example from her story today. Of not everything is perfect, but you're willing to look and be curious about what can change. And empowering your employees is one of the most important things you can do if you want to scale your company. You just have to do it the right way. And so hopefully these practical parts of today will help you. By the way, if anyone hasn't already seen the book, How to Have Tough Conversations, it is out in places where you buy books online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible is available, all of those things. If you're struggling with tough conversations, make sure you check it out. If you think about growth and you think about leadership, think about Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.